Manish Sharma, Chairman, Panasonic Life Solutions, India and South Asia. May I further invite Angelo George, CEO, Bisleri International. May I once again please invite Rampraveen Swaminathan, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Mahindra Logistics. And may I also please extend my warm welcome to invite Anil Syal, President, Safexpress. Let me assure you, we've got thought leaders right here on the stage, and the collective experience, we're all really eager to gather all that and more. So let's have a huge round of applause, everyone. Let's come together and welcome all our leaders here on the stage. Can we make that louder? That's right. It's a panel we're talking about. I'm super stoked. All of you are excited. So once again, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. And I'm going to request you all to take your seats, and I'm going to hand over the proceedings to Mr. Nair. Over to you, sir.
I think it's a very interesting and exciting topic. I mean, I guess most of us who've been supply chain practitioners for the last many years would have seen the last couple of years being the time supply chains have completely changed itself, and hence it obviously results in, this big question on where is the future of supply chain heading towards. As one was contemplating on the topic of saying that consumer behaviors are changing. We are seeing the whole aspect around, headwinds globally. But, the impact of it in India is not as much, but is still there. And at the same time, you're seeing a big impact of, what the previous speaker spoke about, implications of generative AI and similar such digital solutions on supply chains. So all of these, to my mind, is creating a, I would say, unique mix for all of us to kind of think about where the future of supply chain is headed towards. And, in that context, I think along with my co-panelists today, we will just try and see what some of the thoughts each of them have on this topic, and as we move forward through this exciting discussion. So probably I'll start with you, Manish. When we look at consumer behavior or customer behavior, something has dramatically changed over the last couple of years. And at the same time, we see also operating models of businesses changing and supply chains having substantial impact of that. What is your, perspective, and what have you seen in your organization or sector, about this changing consumer customer behavior and the implications it has for supply chain?
Having me here. Ajay, thank you for having me here. Thanks to ET. Reflecting the views, being a generalist to specialist can be overwhelming, but I'll try to do my best. Customers are in the center of everything what happens within the supply chain. And while digitalization in last 3 decades would have fueled this change, specifically in last 3 to 4 years, this has exponentially, the rate of change itself has changed. And I'll give you some instances which might be very specific to our industry. So for example, I work for Panasonic, and many people relate Panasonic being a consumer appliances company. It is just about 35% of what we do in the country. However, if I have to pick up an example of, say, consumer appliances, one change which we have observed in the recent past is that people are preferring products which are helping them multitask. This specifically has got accelerated in last 3 years when a lot of us got confined within our premises. That is one, which essentially means that no longer products should only be connected, but they should be smart. And the differentiation between these two would be sensors getting incorporated into products, and the ability of products to not only be connected to, say, a central source, but also to be able to talk to each other. So that is one. And essentially what will it do? It will create better energy efficiencies, a better comfortable and convenient environment for them. That is one change which has happened. Second is that people have now started to prefer total solutions. And I'm not here to promote Panasonic, but for the sake of reflection, we potentially are one of the few companies in the environment which has products and solutions cutting across both the axes if they exist. On one axis, you have consumer appliances, the durables and the kitchen appliances, the grooming and the beauty products. And on the other axis, you have wires and wiring devices, switches, LED lights, and those kind of products. So if you have the ability to come up with a platform which brings all these products, as I mentioned, the first change which has started to happen, and let these products ride on a platform to create a comfortable, convenient, energy efficient, safer environment for people. Those are the changes which have started to happen specifically when it comes to the consumer's preferences. And last is, the mindsets are now starting to change. In a country which is into development for a while, most often the initial cost of ownership, the initial cost of acquisition, the purchasing cost used to play a significant role. But people have started to shift that mindset to total cost of ownership. So those are some of the changes which are there, noticeable in the environment.
Thanks, Manish. I think if I reflect on some of the points, multitasking, platform, energy efficiency, to me, each of those means very different things from a supply chain standpoint. It means that can you ensure availability of all aspects of it for an end customer becomes a critical aspect on how you look at supply chains. But moving on to Angelo, on the same topic, when you look at it from an end consumer supply chain standpoint, in your business as you look at it and in a similar sector, what would you see as big shifts? We see a big push towards the D2C model. And, I would say that you all have pioneered that in a different form and shape in the D2C scenario. But this whole area is exploding quite a bit. But the implications for supply chain is very substantial. And that's an area to think about to say that how that is going to impact supply chain. So your thoughts on that, Angelo?
Sure. I think a robust supply chain needs to be adaptive, and it also needs to be responding to the shifting dynamics in the market. In our context, it's slightly different. We are in the business of selling water, and we need to provide water when one is thirsty, and it's not a need that can be deferred. In our context, there are three consumer shifts that's happening, if you ask me. The first one is about this entire digitalization piece. The second is the consumer expectations with D2C or B2C, the speed of response. And the third really is about this entire aspect about sustainability and this entire ethical part about a business. And let me share with you from our context. I mean, if you look at digitalization, that is something which is dramatically transforming the consumer landscape. With more smartphones and internet access, I think consumers are today more connected and empowered than ever before. The pandemic possibly was a trigger for the touch-free economy, which is now on online shopping or in terms of digital payments. It's changing the way we interact with consumers. In our own business, it's about the e-commerce business that we have commenced during the pandemic. We are able to connect with customers directly and also not only customize service, but also personalize communication in a big way. I think that is what digitalization has enabled us, because your mobile device is your communication today. Same holds true even for the advertising spends that we have. A significant chunk of money from the mainstream media has moved into OTT platforms, and because people are consuming media today on their mobile phones. Now, equally, from a consumer standpoint, it has to makes us more sensitive to consumer complaints, because people will vent their frustrations on service on social media, and you need to take cognizance. If I were to look at D2C, I think it's a very interesting piece, because you are eliminating the middlemen in some way, and the role of the traditional retail channels are changing. In our own business, Bisleri at doorstep, where we are connecting with consumers, we have seen that you are able to provide a much better consumer experience, get the data directly so you are able to insight on that, and better branding obviously, and consumer loyalty, and I would say relatively better profitability in the entire value chain. The third aspect is about the sustainability piece, which has become the buzzword now. I think consumers are sensitive about brands, how sustainable are they, and their ethical practices. Putting a lot of accountability on brands to be clear in the way in which they are devising eco-friendly solutions or eco-friendly practices. And equally importantly, your fair practices that you are adopting in terms of your engagement with your partners or other stakeholders. And this entire social accountability piece. I mean, Bisleri always had sustainability as part of its DNA. In fact, we were one of the first companies to import a plastic recycling machine as early as the 90s, when it was not even in vogue in India. And we have been at it since. We are a plastic neutral organization since the last 2 years. We actually recycle more plastic than what we put into the market. And we are also a water positive organization that we replenish more water through our harvesting and other methods than we draw from the ground. Now, I remember when I walked into CPCB for a meeting in 2018, you were seen as a villain. And in 2019, when I walked in and the first paragraph of my letter mentioned that we are a plastic neutral organization, the reception I got. So both regulators and consumers, I think, view you differently when you are socially accountable. In fact, Bisleri has released its first sustainability report outlining our sustainability goals till 2025. I believe consumers will respond positively because I think they prefer brands with purpose. Thank you.
So I think those are two interesting insights of consumers driving the behavior on ESG, and at the same time, regulators looking at it positively, and you all driving the change on that, and the whole D2C model being something which is, you can make it profitable and give a better consumer experience. Something which most organizations, especially on the supply chain side, need to learn and do more of. Coming to you, Ram, one of the things when we look at this whole shift in consumer mindset, wanting service immediately, wanting to look at the instant gratification point to industry supply chains which have been used to responding basis inventory and time. How are you seeing the changes from a consumer standpoint in the various customers that you have and their supply chains, and the impact of that on supply chains for you?
Thanks, and thanks for having me, and great insights by both Manish and Angelo. We obviously work with a wide selection of enterprise customers, 300 to 400 of them, and so I think we get to probably see stuff across the board in terms of some secular patterns. And one, I think I would echo what they've already said. I think clearly customers are becoming more aspirational, if I do kind of use it, a simple word. And I think we see all our customers, the products which are moving are generally higher category products, more expensive products, right? If they are things like durables and so on. I think there's a higher aspirational context definitely for customers, and we see that being reflected in volumes as well. I think there's a lot of experience. I think the aspiration is not just in the offering, but also in the experience. For us as a service provider, there's a fair amount of stuff which comes back to us in terms of the quality of the experience we provide, because that's what the brands we work with then are expecting and trying to push into their client spaces. And that's not just around, I think not just around speed, but I think also on dependability. I think coming out of COVID, there was a huge focus on speed first, right? But I think now it's also more to saying, can you be dependable in the way you deliver? In fact, in some cases, I think customers have even said, we are okay, some of our enterprise customers said it's okay if you actually extend lead times. But you do it properly, do it in a way which is predictable. So predictability and reliability, I think, have actually become as important as speed, right? I think the other thing which I think is across the board is the sustainability. Sustainability has become a very, very big driver. I think we will still not be at a point where people will pay for sustainability. But I think people will definitely choose for it, right? All other things being equal, I think there's a clear consumer behavior which shows that all other things being equal, I think they will choose companies with purpose, choose companies which have a clear ESG direction, right? Versus companies and brands which don't. So for us, from a supply chain perspective, the challenge I think is how do you create, how do you embed sustainability in the way we do and not actually ask for a premium? I think that's the big challenge. The big challenge I think is, how do you make this, how do you do that without actually asking for a premium? So today, we run what is probably India's largest electric vehicle fleet, and across 19 cities. And I think the package prices we charge, whether it's electric or ICE, is the same. Right? So I think you have to kind of get to a point where you actually kind of start answering that question, not as something which you are saying is a premium, but actually is a way of life. And if you do that, I think you will find that customers will choose you because you're doing that. And the real value you will get is the scale of your business and not really necessarily the yield in the short term, right? But I think sustainability is a very, very big factor. And I think in the supply chain, we'll have to figure out how we can actually work with customers like Bisleri or Panasonic and others to actually help map out what is the carbon footprint in their supply chain. How can you actually make clear moves to reduce it? And I think, and especially the supply chain industry, Scope 3 is a real challenge for supply chain because we work a lot with MSMEs, lot with smaller companies. And so finding a longer term sustainability direction around small players and actually helping them do that, I think is really critical as well.
Thanks, Ram. I think the interesting insight about lead time being more reliable that rather than being fast, it's something which gets missed quite a bit. I think that's interesting. And ESG to be part of the game as normal as it can be, rather than looking at it as a premium, looking at scale to get the money, rather than looking at it as an individual premium. Fantastic. Anil, coming to you on, a slightly different question. We've been looking at investments that the government has been pushing on the whole logistics infrastructure. They are, pushed towards making digital, that is through a ULIP or a ONDC kind of platform, shifts to the future. And also their entire ability to try and say that how do you overall bring the logistics costs down for the country as a whole. But all of this, in your own form and shape, in your organizational sector, what are you seeing as some of these initiatives bringing to bear in terms of supply chains for your customers and for your organization?
Thank you. If you will indulge me a little, I'll want to pitch in for one small point that Ram was mentioning. We, as you know, Safexpress is a B2B distribution organization. Our customer profile is all businesses, small, medium, large, and variety of them. Interestingly, we commissioned a study somewhere, earlier this year. And, in the post GST rollout realm that is, ongoing now, the need of what the customers want, the businesses want, because there is, because the post GST has created a different, reorganization, if I may call it, a reorganization of supply chain, network planning and whatnot. So the need for customers, the businesses, right, unequivocally is speed. That's what my customers are telling me. So what do I know? Anyhow, coming to what you mentioned about the government, induced growth impetus that is going on, whether it is the GST. The GST, of course, has been a major milestone. It has helped create a lot of, neatness or cleanness or sanity amongst the network planning, because pre-GST, all organizations was creating their own networks around the statutory, framework. And post-GST, it has now become one nation, one tax, and of course the neatness around that has enabled organizations to realign their supply chains appropriately. So consolidations have happened. That in turn has changed a whole lot of cost optimization and efficiency, specifically on account of warehouse planning and stuff. So it has, of course, triggered a whole lot of warehousing demand, formal warehousing demand and whatnot. Coming to the cost point, the government initiative specifically from the infrastructural side, whether it is highways or expressways or the cut down of check post on account of GST, all these of course have clearly brought in definitive measurable advantages on the supply chain cost frontiers. The ongoing efforts, the national logistics policy, the Gati Shakti, the ONDC, these are ongoing, and hence the realizations of these are a little distant. But having had a peek at what is within these, let's talk about Gati Shakti for a moment. The multi-layer integration of various government departments have basically enabled a massive cost advantage to variety of supply chain facets. So that will directly implement or that will directly deliver cost advantage to the national cost of logistics to whichever number it is. The national policy, of course, is asking for a cost reduction there. ONDC is, of course, it's very nascent, very early stage, but yes, because it is a demographic level implementation, and hence it definitely embodies a whole lot of advantages that can possibly come in, clearly not in towards cost, but certainly in towards the overall engagement of the economy into e-commerce or integration or digitalization or whatever have you. Supply chain, of course, is the fabric of the entire ONDC getting through. So clearly you will find some advantages there. But if I circle back to my first point, which I was trying to make, when we did this study in businesses across India, and this was across India, by the way, speed was, critical first milestone that was required. And that was also because there's a lot of integration that has happened. So unlike what Ram possibly or his organization is experiencing, my customers are telling me, I'm ready to pay $1 more, make sure that you deliver on time so that I can integrate and maybe save far more money on the supply chain overall efficiency standpoint. Besides that, of course, the second big ask is reach. Can you reach the farthest or the deepest or the widest, because e-com or e-com enabled business development is something which is now a given. ONDC is, of course, an extension of that. That's where I or my organization is seeing it today.
No, great. I think, different view, but I think speed, important from a select set of customers, it is critical, reliability for somebody else. But I think the point that you make on, the government initiatives about, structuring the whole infrastructure development in a way that it looks to optimize the logistics cost for the country as a whole. And ONDC being, obviously it's the new kid on the block, but the fact that it will democratize the whole ability to deliver service to a larger set of demographics will be an interesting one. Coming back to you, Manish, when we look at, I think most of the panelists spoke about ESG in supply chain. I think increasingly what is pretty obvious is that ESG in supply chain is an important, critical thing, needs to happen. There are challenges in that of working with many small service providers and making that happen. What is your own perspective on, driving this ESG in supply chain? What has been your experiences and thinking?
So again, I think ESG needs to be central to the governance models for organization without any doubt, because it encompasses a lot what should be the priority for organizations. And say when it comes to environment specific to our organization, it would cut across 4 important aspects of, say, what energy generation or energy consumption or methodologies to save energy and manage energy can create. And we are taking a methodical approach, starting from the top. So globally, we have made an announcement of a policy called Green Impact, which essentially means that by 2030, we will make all the manufacturing facilities across the world carbon neutral. And by 2050, we are aiming to make the total impact, not only of the facilities, but also the products, the impact which they create on the environment to be carbon neutral. So that's the ambitious target which we have taken globally. And when it comes to ESG, I think people are now starting to understand, because when you take the next step of understanding that which are the initiatives under the ESG umbrella across all three: environment, social, and corporate governance, it breaks down into a lot of activities. So we need to take a prioritized approach and not necessarily get overwhelmed. Only then we'll be able to bridge the gap between what systems and processes can do for you and how will you align those things with your business objectives. So I think those are some of the reflections, and some additional points. The necessity for embracing such processes, including the logical outcome on the environment, into businesses like ours is really the need of the hour. And I'll give you a very small instance. We just are getting out of a moderate summer season, and organizations like us who deal with products like air conditioners, you will not believe that if we try to measure the time when, say, the procurement of raw material, a purchase order is triggered from the time, say, the air conditioner is installed, you will not believe that the total lead time in this whole process, from the time of placement of purchase order for raw material to the time the air conditioner is installed, is almost 320 days. And when it rains elsewhere, you start to sneeze here. And you would imagine the impact of changes into commodity prices, the exchange rates, where still the dependency of imports on such industries exceeds more than 50%, while schemes like PLI, etc., are helping us backward integrate and reduce the dependency of supply chain elsewhere. But the necessity to have efficiencies, better planning, utilization of systems and platforms and processes, insight-driven decision-making is the need of the hour.
I think you bring a very interesting point about, the interventions around shortening the lead times in supply chains, especially supply chains like yours, and the impact it has. Clearly, getting it more backward integrated into India through the PLI schemes, India being more a center of manufacturing, which is another big theme which is getting driven. I think very critical towards obviously also contributing to the eventual ESG in supply chain. Ram, sorry, I'm just going to come to you on this topic. India in the global supply chain. The headwinds are challenging as we see the global headwinds. India seems to be the lone shining star as of now. What is your own sense on two things? One, this whole impact it has on businesses that you see for your customers and hence for you. But more importantly, the fact that India being the center of supply chain, as probably one of the many de-risking models that global organizations are looking at. What are you seeing on that aspect of it?
It's interesting. So a couple of things. I think one, so one, clearly across all our customers, nearshoring or China plus one or whatever you want to call it, I think that's an active play. And I think for companies which are doing business in India, doing schemes like PLI are actually helping. So we are seeing that shift clearly there, right? It's layered. It's probably not consistent across the board, but there is clear speed to it. So anybody who's doing business which is India destination, I think is looking at definitely bringing more into India. That's clearly there. Is India actually emerging as an alternate to China? I don't know if we can actually say that clearly right now. I would say that there's a long distance before we can say that. I think China plus one is not an easy one to do, right? I think we had the example of automotive. A typical automotive company has probably 250 to 300 vendors, but when you go through that value chain, it probably explodes to 15 to 17,000 companies, right? So when you look at saying a simple thing like, we're going to move to an alternate to resource it, it's not just at one layer, it's across all layers. And that's not easy to do in the first instance, right? It's really hard to do. And it's arguable that it will not always be India, right? It will be, for North America, it might be Mexico. For South Asia, it might be Vietnam. So I think there's a lot of work yet to be done in terms of being able to solve for that. Now, I think logistics is an important part of that solve, because clearly whether the direct cost is 7 to 8%, there are hidden costs in terms of what Manish was saying, the supply chain is much longer. There's just stuff which you don't see very clearly,
Right.
In terms of time value of money, which all adds up, right? And so there's a lot of work which you have to do in supply chain. I think the government's vision to saying that we have to fix this clearly, almost as a condition precedent, I think is the right way of looking at it. But we are a long way from, I think, being an alternate to China for the rest of the world. I think that's just my honest view.
No, I mean, it's fair is what I would say, because it is more to see that there are aspects of various industrial supply chains, various sector supply chains, which are a lot driven by the fact that if India is a destination, why not more?
That's clearly happening.
That's clearly happening.
That's
And
clearly
then to see that what else, which has to make economical sense, has to have the impact of ESG, because, if you're going to move something closer, then probably yes. And the nearshoring model doesn't necessarily mean that it is plus one, it is plus many, and India could be one amongst the many. And
if I could just add one thing, I think what is really powerful for us from a longer term perspective is our ability to design products in India as well.
Right.
So when that shift happens, it's not just make in India, but it's actually design in India. I think what makes India probably special in our competitive set is that you can actually design products in country as well for the whole world. And it's combining both of those. And so when we speak to clients, not just as Mahindra Logistics, but as other parts of Mahindra together, one of the things which actually I think is compelling for those companies is the fact that you can actually do a lot more in India just than make in India. And that actually has a big long-term upside for those organizations, even though it may not be a short-term thing.
No, I think that's a good idea. Design plus manufacture, that makes a big differentiator for the whole. So coming to you, Angelo, again, a slightly different point. The main thing about supply chains that we keep hearing through the whole value chain is digital supply chains, and we've got many new technologies. We heard the previous gentleman speaking about generative AI. But how do you see the future of some of these things from a pure India context and Indian supply chains that you see from your organization standpoint? What are some of the implications from a digital standpoint that you see?
I think this entire development of technology across the board touches for an organization like us from more efficient planning till an agile delivery on the ground. And let me illustrate with a few examples. I mean, if you're looking at better planning, you're talking about better algorithms, machine learning, and everything you can think of, giving you a forecast which is better, enabling you to reduce your lead times in terms of better production planning, and also saving cost in terms of inventories. Now, we have a slightly different model in India. We have got about 150 factories. So it is not a central forecasting which is driving our system. But I'll tell you how it helps us. When you're talking about an e-commerce, we have this random demand coming from consumers, and you have to figure out a way of cost effectively delivering it. That is where it is helping us, because a machine learning is helping us understand that from this building, I'm getting an order on Monday and a Wednesday and a Thursday morning and a Thursday afternoon. Is there some way of kind of harmonizing it so I'm able to kind of plan my deliveries better? I think that's where it is helping us in terms of efficient planning. If I'm looking at sourcing, again, digital platforms and marketplaces are bringing suppliers into a common platform. The supplier discovery, evaluation, and collaboration is far more possible today. You are able to get a larger pool of suppliers, and you are able to evaluate them on cost, reliability, and quality. Again, we have a distributed supply chain, which brings in the context of regional vendors for us. And we are able to use these platforms to harmonize prices across the board and identify those reliable vendors in terms of different parts of our entire model. And if I'm looking at manufacturing, what I would call it as smart manufacturing, I'm sure the smart factories of the future possibly will give you real-time visibility on production, talk about, let's say, alert predictive maintenance and stuff like that, and also seamlessly integrate the different stages of manufacturing. In our case, if I were to look at how that plays out, possibly is when you are, what's the right example which I could give? Yeah, I think it is about aligning this entire piece of consumer demand coming into the factory and the factory producing the goods which are in the right quality. We have got these 150 factories and we were grappling with the level of quality adherence and process controls. So we said, let us put a visual control at a head office on every process. That kind of really helped us because sitting in HO, you are able to understand, is there any lacuna out there? And has the maintenance and the execution, the remedial measures have been done or not? And you are also able to archive it, so over a period of time you understand which are those plants which are doing well and which are the ones which are not doing well. We are not moved into smart manufacturing as yet. In terms of agility of supply chain, I think it's about putting in those systems and processes, the routing softwares, the transport management software. They're all helping us kind of reduce cost. In our own deliveries, we are using both transport management and fleet management softwares, which is helping us significantly in terms of managing cost, enhance the speed of deliveries, particularly related to direct deliveries to consumers, and better turnover of our transport assets. I think that's a great value. So I think this entire technology piece is going to help us, organizations like us, to be far more agile, resilient, and I would say continue to be strongly consumer-centric. Thank you.
I think that's a fantastic articulation of business impact of all the supply chain technologies. And I often, when I talk to clients or even to supply chain practitioners, the challenge is about articulating this. And thanks, Angelo, you pulled it out very well. I think the impact across all aspects of supply chain. Anil, coming to you, same question. What are you seeing from your standpoint, the impact of these various digital technologies in your business and your customers' business?
Interestingly, I had once again I heard it differently. So let me give you an aspect. We are an organization working for various organizations. I can tell you how I'm feeling, others are responding.
Right.
So back in the day when most of the professionals sitting here are logistics professionals or in one form or the other. I'm sure if anybody's learnt logistics in the classrooms, there was this one game I remember back in the day called the beer game. And everybody played that, unlike fellows like me who learned my logistics on the field. But anyhow, I did happen to understand what that means and how it's played, not with the glasses actually. But having said that, I kind of mulled the unimportance of it at that point in time. But effectively, as I grew in, I grew deeper into various organizations, I realized the emphasis of it today. Planning has been, if I look at various weak links in supply chains across many organizations, so this might be my learning that the planning is one of the weakest link that kind of takes away that. So if there is a AI wave coming in, I request somebody to please take over the planners of the world so that at least there is a seamlessness in the supply chain that comes through. Because on one day we had this semiconductors shortfall, on the next year we have a semiconductors glut. So I'm not sure. Post-COVID, everybody decided to ramp up because there was a pent-up demand. So there was this glut of inventory all across the West. And there's plethora of examples I can tell you. Fortunately, India has been somewhat insulated in that realm. But if there is this wave of automation coming, if there is a wave of Industry 4.0 marrying Logistics 4.0, IoT or AI, or any of these, this thing, I'm sure there is definite case of integration of Industry 4.0 with Logistics 4.0. So AI, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't, it's a buzzword today for different reasons altogether, but it's not new for something that supply chain is working with. There is definite level of algorithms that organizations in the supply chain already pre-function with that. You know, what Mr. Bhattacharya of AWS was showing earlier, these are already ingrained in our system for a very long time. I personally feel it's now becoming front and center, and that's the benefit of this all. So the general recognition of this is actually bringing in the advantage. So that's what my understanding of this is. The supply chain organization, like us, of course, imbibes it quicker than quite often most of the manufacturing organizations or manufacturers, traders and such. So we're kind of in the forefront of that in any case. So that's my take.
Right. No, thanks. I think the big takeaway there, honestly, is that for supply chains, the ecosystem of partners, not just within the organization. If you work with your partners and leverage some of the technologies, which honestly can help you improve the weak link that you mentioned about, and that is a genuine weak link in most organizations to solve for, and that is where the future would look towards. I think we are a bit out of time, gentlemen. Probably good, interesting discussions, great insights on ESG in supply chain and practical applications, digital solutions, and their applications practically spoken about. India at the center of global supply chains, and most importantly, consumer behavior changing, many things that supply chain needs to plan for. Thank you for your time. Pleasure talking to all of you.
Thank you very much. If I could please request all our speakers to remain on the stage. And if I could please invite Mr. Manoj Nair, Senior Director, Conferences and Special Initiatives, Time Strategic Solutions Limited, to please come forward to present a token of gratitude to all of our panelists. If I could please invite Mr. Manoj Nair. And meanwhile, I'm going to request our members of the audience to be seated because I have some interesting quiz questions coming up. And if you get the answers right, you win some really cool freebies. So stay tuned. Some really cool questions coming your way in a short while. Thank you very much to all of our speakers.